Hi, my name is Paula and I'm a new mom. Welcome to We've Probably Been There, a podcast by First Moms Club about how we really dealt and truly felt about everything motherhood. No BS, no judgment, and no advice, from us at least. Welcome to the club. This is the story of how we decided to enroll our infants in sleep school so that we could relearn how to sleep ourselves. When my firstborn, Maya, was about 6 months old, I knew that some of my friends decided to sleep train their children, but I didn't know much about it. All I knew is that, you left your child to cry until they were taught to sleep independently. I remember calling two of my friends who had opposite views on the subject, and that made me have more mixed feelings and even more anxiety because it didn't really give me a clear-cut answer. I was very conflicted, and I thought that if I sleep trained my daughter, it was for me. So it was more of like a selfish act more than for her. Turns out, in retrospect, I didn't know anything about it at all. So today I'm joined by Catherine to talk about their views and our views on sleep training now and the many ways that we went about it. So hi, Catherine.
Okay.
So let's talk about just sleep training as a whole. I think it's a completely misunderstood concept. It's proven that it is misunderstood because I didn't understand it until afterwards, until I actually practiced it. I first thought sleep training, just the word training really, had me conflicted because you train a dog. So training a child for me, it was I thought it was like a very harsh thing to do. And like I said, like it would have been selfish for me. And I didn't understand the whole concept in general. So let's talk about your experience with sleep training. Did you know about it before you had kids? Did you understand it before? Like what was the concept of sleep training in your head?
No, I didn't know about it before I had kids. And
Okay.
I think you get to that when you cross that road where
Yeah.
you kind of, in my experience, get out of the newborn stage.
Hmm.
And then you're like, well, okay, now this being has to learn how to kind of um, sleep independently from me. Kind of detach from me. You're like one unit in those newborn months, kind
Yeah.
of like a koala
Yeah.
or like a kangaroo. It's always on you.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, now you got to learn how to sleep alone, which
Yeah.
is a thing we all do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I like your point on training because that term or that concept feels a bit like forceful
Yeah.
and harsh and like, you're doing this to your child. But really, and I say this now coming out of it, two kids in, it's just more you're teaching them skills on how to sleep alone.
Hmm.
Um, Things that you don't do when they come out of the womb or they're newborn, because that would be too harsh. You don't
Right.
do that to a baby.
Yeah.
It's like transitional gradually, and in my situation, like it was a no-brainer. We had to do it.
Okay.
You're like everything for me in the newborn days is so harsh, is so drastic that we need to take these measures. We need to give ourselves tools to help ourselves. Um, and that's why simultaneously, sleeping and nursing and everything goes better because it's so intertwined. It's such a circle, right? If they sleep well, usually things go better. Like when we sleep well, we're usually going to have a good day. If we don't
Mhm.
sleep well, everything kind of sort of spirals. Same thing for them. So
So you knew that sleep training was going to be a thing, you were gonna do it, and
I never knew, but given the situation we were in, like we had to.
that was
In
the only
both,
option. Yeah.
I have two kids with both kids, like again tied to like the crisis we're always in those newborn days. Like it had to happen.
Okay. And so at what age did you decide to sleep train, and how did you decide to sleep train?
So with the first it happened at 6 months, and with the second it happened at 4.
Okay.
That was more of a dire circumstance.
Right.
Like that's not a suggestion I'm making, or it's more like given the situation we were in, we kind of had to for our sanity, our mental health, the
Okay.
overall well-being of the household.
Right.
We checked all marks. It was like a no-brainer.
Okay.
So
So in my experience, you can kind of sleep train in two different routes. You can read it online and kind of do it
yeah.
yourself, like,
Mhm.
or you can consult and hire a specialist
Yeah.
in sleep and kind of follow their guidelines. What did you do?
With my eldest, we did it ourselves.
You did it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. But the thing is, again, I'll preface this, like, I read a ton on things before I
yeah.
do them.
Yeah.
Again, I read and I amass, like, the common denominator, and
Yeah.
we took our stab at it, and it worked.
Okay.
Um, and I think that she, and I don't, I always think of, like, I'm saying stuff and, like, are the girls gonna see this later on?
Yeah.
But, the sleep was definitely going better with the first than it did with the second, just because we had this, like, kind of, like, such a
Interesting.
spiraling event with the second where everything went to, like, hell
Mm-hmm.
with the second. But, no, with the eldest, we still got good stretches, so it didn't galvanize the kind of, like, the fact that we needed to sleep train early on.
Yeah.
Like, it was manageable, it was sustainable, uh, to get to 6 months. Like, with the second, we would have never gotten to 6 months the way things were going. So we weren't in a rush, and we took our stab at it, and it's almost like I remember with the eldest, we just needed to, like, bridge, like, yeah, a certain gap. I think she'd be waking at 4 a.m. and I needed to bridge, like, 4 to 6.
Mm-hmm.
And so there I just applied, like, again, I know that there are different kind of, like, doctrines or theories or schools of thought in sleep training, but the overarching, like, takeaway in all of them is sort of like, well, you've got to let them figure out how to fall asleep by themselves in order to fall asleep, and then so that they can start connecting cycles. And so I think we just did a bit of, like, well, no, you're supposed to be sleeping now. You don't need milk. You're 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
The whole, I think 6 months is a benchmark because they say technically they don't need to
Eat.
eat anymore during the night, right? Weight gain, or
Yeah.
depending on if you get the pediatrician's approval, like, he'll say, well, they don't, their weight is fine. They're following their curve.
Yeah.
They don't need to eat anymore at night. It's just maybe
At
they're
night.
solely waking up out of habit. It's habitual, or it's comfort. And so, it's like, well, no, now you're getting up just out of habit.
Yeah.
You technically don't need to eat. We had introduced, also a big point is, like, we had introduced at 6 months solids,
Mm-hmm.
so we'd introduced solids. You're eating, some solid food during the day. And you're technically now, you can sleep the night. You don't need to wake for milk. And so now let's just try to connect that cycle. So
Okay,
we
so-
did, like, I would say, light sleep training.
Yeah. So that's very interesting because I didn't do at all what you did. So I'm different from you. I'm actually the opposite of you, where I don't like to read and research and, take time to learn about all this stuff. It's just I don't have the patience for it. I just want to call somebody to tell me what to do and to comfort me in what I'm doing is correct. And I need someone there to give me peace of mind. Like, that's just the person that I am, who explained to me, what's going on in their head. So everything that you just said about the sleep cycles, I knew nothing about that because you obviously read about it and taught yourself. But someone needed to teach me that. So I needed all the knowledge from them, and I needed the support, and I needed the troubleshooting. Like, she's been crying for 45 minutes. Like, what do I do? Like, I need
the case
that.
by case. Yeah.
So I didn't have it. So with Maya, it was difficult because it was my first. And they had asked me, like, which route is comfortable for you? What do you want to do? And I said, I just want to get it done as fast as possible. So we started our journey together with Maya, and it was very seamless. It was a little bit difficult at the beginning, but it was quick. And, they assured me, like, how it was going to go, and they could set my expectations so that they were tangible, and I knew what was coming. So, I'm very impressed with what you did because I don't think I would have persevered in doing it by myself. Like, I need that person to tell me, to validate my actions. So with Maya, it was a little bit more difficult being my first. And then, not to get into just the newborn, but, like, sleep changes as they grow older, right? So, there's the teaching them to sleep independently, but then there's, like, all the troubleshooting all along the way with the years. So, like, there's, night wakings, and then transferring them into a bed. And then, like, the sleep is like a never end teething.
Sleep regressions.
Child development. Why are they waking up all of a sudden?
Wonder weeks.
I mean, there's all this stuff that, I'm not a specialist, so I don't know, but to this day, both my kids, like Maya's 3.5 and Maddie is 18 months old, and I still make appointments with my sleep specialists
Great.
because I need them all the time. Sleep just never ends. You always need to sleep.
But it's an investment, right?
It is an investment.
And it's your well-being. Sleep is the cornerstone of everything.
Yeah.
Like, we've done many, podcasts, but if I could combine them, like, it's the cornerstone. If you don't have sleep, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
Right? It's the starting point. You
Yeah.
cannot function with a sound and reasonable, rational mind if you don't have sleep. Like, nothing good comes from a lack of sleep. Everything, it spirals.
And I learned through all this knowledge was what you had said on one podcast, I forget which one, but we're really teaching them and giving them the tools by giving them the gift of sleep. Like, it's a gift. It's not, it's not training. It's not forcing it on them. It's not doing something that they're not ready for. It's giving them the gift of sleep so that they are able to get a good night's sleep. And by consequence, we are sleeping and everybody is just happier in the household. I think that, sleep is a very misunderstood and crucial topic with children. And I think that I'm the type of person that if I can make it easier on myself, like, why not?
Mhm.
If somebody can tell me what to do, then why not? Why wouldn't I use that resource?
Mhm.
So yes, so both my kids, I taught them how to sleep with the help of
Yeah.
sleep specialists, and I thank them every day because I have two great sleepers.
Mm. All the more merit to you.
Thanks.
You know,
Yeah.
But, like, what is sleep training, right? Like, I like to say it's sleep teaching.
Yeah.
And your point, you're not doing this to your kid, you're doing this for your kid.
Yeah.
You're teaching them how to sleep.
Yeah.
And
sorry.
there's nothing wrong with, what one does in the newborn months. I remember this was really important to me, and I heard it, like, many places, and it's, especially for me and with my struggles in the crisis that it's the newborn months for me, that it has been, is like, you can't spoil a newborn.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes, it's survival mode. Whatever it takes to get by day, minute by minute, feed by feed, nap by nap. It's like,
Mhm.
just get through your day.
Yeah.
And one note that I want to say that's, like, overarching in all these topics is you got to give yourself some grace. Like, whether you choose to sleep train, whether you choose to, like, in newborn day, and if there's
Co-sleep.
co-sleep, they're sleeping on you, whatever it is, you got to give yourself some grace. It's just about getting through it.
Mhm.
And then I do think that it's an important skill that you're teaching them that will serve you, is what you're getting at, in the long run.
Yeah.
You're investing in this now so that it serves you till they're 3.5.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
know what? I will say it because it's something that I learned, and I think it's really important, that was actually told in one of our sleep survival specialist podcasts, is that, you do whatever works for your family. So just like feeding, if you choose to breastfeed, if you choose to formula feed, if you choose to combination feed, I didn't know that it could be the same for sleep, in the sense where like, if co-sleeping is your goal and that works for your family, then that's fine. If teaching your kid to sleep independently is your goal and that works for your family, then that's fine. It doesn't mean that, sleep training is the only way that your kid is going to learn how to sleep on their own. Like, I mean, obviously,
No.
but you do whatever works for your family and what your goal is in that moment. So, my goal was that I wanted my kids to sleep on their own so that I could get sleep. Like, I needed to sleep. I wanted to sleep with my husband again in our bed again, without my Maya and Maddie were sleeping in my bed until they were 6 months old. Like, that's 6 months. Well, minus like the 2 months of the bassinet, but that's 4 months of sleeping with a child, buffeting on my breast all night long. Like, I'm done. I got tired. So I needed that next chapter, that next step to happen.
That's why you needed it to transition,
Yeah.
And you know what what I realized, and it's like, again, motherhood, parenthood is so interesting because no two experiences are the same. Is like, I actually know a few people that didn't even have to, like, sleep train.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, what? The stars just aligned and, like, poof.
Yeah.
You've got a 6-month-old who does 12 hours. Like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and I know several people, and, it's just like, that's so interesting to me. And so it's not a requisite, but it's there as a tool, and to
Mhm.
me, a necessity if you need it.
Mhm.
Like, and that's to me just how we transition to, like, again, baby learning how to sleep, independent of you. Um, then there's the whole like, transferring them to their room,
Yeah.
and they're in your room, and she was in our room in a bassinet
Yeah.
for 6 months.
Yeah.
That transition too.
And I think that, not to say that it wasn't difficult. I remember, you know, the only way that we could have taught her how to self-soothe independently was by letting her cry. Like that was the way that we chose to do it. And I remember like kind of sitting in front of their bedroom, watching the camera, making sure that like, when are they going to stop crying, timing it. Like that was excruciating. Like it was really difficult.
When you're starting, yeah.
Because you feel like they're like, I'm going to scar them for the rest of their lives.
And I don't know if it's like more of a personality trait. Like I can withstand crying way more than my husband, for instance. Like I'm the contrary of you. Like I forget about the monitors. I used to with the first have a monitor on my phone. I don't even set it up anymore for the second.
Oh my God. No.
I think it's like it's just better, and that's also what I like about being a second time mom. You're more like you just know like everyone's going to survive, everything's going to be okay, and it teaches them resilience. And like the crying I could withstand. So I think I was more okay like with the second when we were doing like intervals, like gently, like I knew that it was like for the best.
Yeah.
I don't want to say like in French, mal pour un bien, but I knew that it was like worthwhile and that we were going to reap the benefits.
Yeah.
And but like, it's definitely hard to look at those monitors and to hear that crying. But I do want to say this. I think overall, like from my experience with both, it took like, 3 to 4 to like max a week.
Yeah.
To like, I think immediately on the second or third night, we just saw like this jolt of like this improvement. And we're like, wow, thank the Lord. Like, it was so worthwhile.
Yeah. I agree.
So worthwhile. And I wouldn't have done it any other way because that's what corresponded to us. Like, we are so grateful for it. We got our lives back since doing that. I think I would always tell you, I was like, we were desperately waiting for that 4-month benchmark so we could do this. We're like, please, not that I was always torn because it's like, I don't want to go through the newborn days because they're your babies and they're newborns, but also wanting to get there so we could do this, so we could just get our lives back. And like, once they're sleeping their nights again, I can't emphasize this enough. It's like, you find yourself again, you get your life back, and it's a whole new kind of like chapter.
Yeah. I totally feel that.
Like I embrace babyhood. I love it again. Like, cause cause you have sleep. If everybody's sleeping, everything's going fine. And it's I remember the feelings like that shock, right? Like, so they're in the world as they know it for 3 months, whereas that every time they cry, they get mommy or they get their parent or somebody responds. And now for the first time, you're placing them in their room, this new environment that they know nothing of. They're going to sleep there in the crib. And you're leaving him there, and now you're crying, and you're not coming, and it's like just like giving them that shock to them, and feeling that guilt of like, I'm about to rock your world, but for the better.
I had to go outside and put AirPods on and just watch the camera in silence because I was incapable of hearing the pain that I thought that I was like scarring my child, But in hindsight now, it's it's the knowledge that I got that kind of got me through it. I wouldn't have done it, just like that. Like, I need to know that my child wasn't scarred for life, that I'm doing the right thing.
That there's no damage to
that
them.
There's no damage. Like, I need someone to tell me like all the knowledge behind it, the why, the what's going on in their brain,
why we have to do this.
Everything, And so that's why I think that it's for us, at least in our family, I needed to understand everything behind sleep, how sleep works for kids, what's going on in their brain, what's circadian rhythm, like everything. So
also,
that's how we did it.
It's like there's so much to cover, like getting them on the schedule. What worked for me is that everything kind of started to regulate and fall into place when we started to create like a sleep schedule with a routine and assigned sleep times.
Yeah.
But to each their own.
Yeah.
Right? Some people never need to do this because like baby just sleeps and like, you do whatever you need to do to thrive. It's not only baby thriving, it's the family thriving.
Yeah.
To finding, and sleep training is also finding that new normal for baby. Like this will now be life.
Correct.
As we know it.
Yeah. And I really feel like I'm for our family, I needed, like, I was and I still think I am the, like, sleep routine holder of the family.
Yeah, I
Like,
like that.
it's my, like, I'm driving that vehicle, if you will. And, it's important to me. And I need to kind of like put my foot down and be like, no, this is the time. This is, how we're going to do it. And I'm kind of, in charge of that. I wanted to say that, you know, I, I commend you for doing it on your own for your first, because like I said, for me, I needed someone to kind of like, I'm not gonna say personalize, but I needed to feel like it was, like, custom to me. I needed to feel like my child was the only child going through this, and this was like a catered, um, tool or strategy, and how we're gonna do it for your kid. Even though, I mean, they probably suggest this to every child, but I needed that personalized one-to-one, like, "Okay, well, what does Maya do when she goes to sleep? What time does she go to sleep? Okay, well, let's play." I needed that one-to-one personalization to feel like we are working
We're
towards
addressing the problem.
Maya, yeah, towards Maya, and not, newborns from 0 to 6 or 0 to 2 months, like, I needed that, personal conversation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get it.
But you, obviously, you just read and you did and it worked.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
who's to say that if it didn't work, I wouldn't have reached out to
Yeah,
somebody,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know? Like, that's what professionals are there for,
Yeah.
right? You gotta trust the professionals. They study
Yeah.
how many years to know
Yeah.
all these things.
Yeah.
Um, and, it's not I think this is what I wanted to say. It's not because you're saying it's this constant evolution and journey
Mhm.
and investment.
Mhm.
I think that it's not because, who's to say that you haven't sleep trained, in the first 6 months or when they're babies, that you're not gonna have to do it later.
Exactly.
Sleep is a constant and investment, and who's to say that if you don't do the groundwork now that you might not have to do it later,
You know what? I've noticed that, so let's say, like, at 6 months, we did the sleep training. We taught, like, how I think about it is that we taught them the skills like a muscle, okay, that they developed, and they have that muscle, and that muscle is working. But every time we throw a curveball at them, every time we go on holiday, every time there's a time change, every time,
Sleeping
there's
on the go.
sleeping on the go, developmentally something's happening. I don't know, you change them from crib to bed. Like, we're throwing these curveballs at them. They have to be taught how to, sleep in that new environment, in that new curveball with that new, agent, and those tools, like, I don't have. You know what I mean? Like, I need somebody to tell me, okay, well, maybe go check in on her every once in a while, maybe do this, maybe do that. But, like, my kids knew how to sleep when we went to Europe, and there's 6 hours difference. They knew how to sleep, but there's a couple of days it's like it's an adjustment. It's a new environment, it's a new time, so, but at least they had the muscle was working. They had the
Well
muscle,
said. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that for me is like,
They have the foundation, and then they just
yeah,
gotta, like, get
just
get back on that
mold
kind
it.
of
Yeah,
schedule.
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
another thing I wanna talk about is I think that, like, if I was a first-time mom about to sleep train and I'm watching this, like, where would I be and how would I feel? And I think that, the reticence that comes from wanting to sleep train is that kind of, like, you feel so guilty and scared
Yeah.
about, and we touched on it, what
Yeah.
you're gonna do to your child.
Yeah.
And I was just there at 4 months when she felt so little and so baby to me, but all I can say is, like, you will come out on top, and it's an investment, and it's worthwhile. And I've heard stories of, like you, like the mom, like, it's the dad who does it and the mom can't even hear, or,
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that's why you gotta find the method for you. What I wanted to say is what we really noticed was the big benefit was that she couldn't connect cycles, so she'd wake up at every time her cycle was over.
Yeah.
And so here we noticed that as soon as we did it, as soon as she made herself fall asleep all alone
Yeah.
and she woke up to another cycle, well, she was back in the place where she started.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like in her crib, and then she could reconnect.
Mhm.
And then the more they connect, well, the more they're sleeping.
Yeah.
So it's like the longer they can go.
So, this the sleep specialist, Jamie, one of the sleep specialists that works with us, she said it very well on our sleep survival podcast. She said, you know, I didn't sleep train them, or I didn't teach them how to sleep, like, for my benefit. She did it because she thought it was unfair to make them fall asleep in her arms, put them in their crib, and then they would wake up and like not know where they are. And she found that was unfair to them, you know?
I just think, and I'll throw this out there, your point. Like, I do believe, and this is based on just like what observationally I've noticed, that apparently kids thrive in any kind of structure and routine. They need to know what to expect to feel comfortable. And if they don't know that, that makes them feel really anxious. And so they thrive in expectation, knowing what to expect in that routine. And so sleep is the same thing. Like, and I find that, you know, when you don't respect that, or they go like, they skip a nap, or my girls are still napping, right? They're 2.5 and 9 months. Like when you throw that out, like things go haywire, like really, really fast. And so it's really important to always try to bring back that structure, whether it's like that next nap time, or because to keep things kind of regimented in order for things just to roll, to keep the machine rolling.
Yeah. And
Right?
nobody wants to be up all night. Like, let's face it, that's not something that, we enjoy doing. So I think that teaching them how to sleep, like, it's like you said, it's a skill. It's a skill that needs to be taught. And in my opinion, and
It's an investment.
and understanding the whys behind it really, really helped me and my family.
It's just I think like what's really important is I'm trying to bring myself back to when they were both younger and how I felt, and I think with the second doing it at 4 months, like I had more guilt vis-a-vis it because I kept feeling like she's so baby.
Hmm.
She's so little. Like, how am I doing this to her? How am I doing this to her?
Even
then
that's interesting, even though you'd already sleep trained your first.
Of course, because, the first was 6 months eating solids, like, psychologically, it was like, oh, she's eating food.
Hmm.
And, the pediatrician was like, you guys are in a dire situation. Like,
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to give you the green light.
Yeah.
Like, her weight gain is fine. Like, you don't need to introduce solids to do it. If it just means like, and, you can do, he was like, you can do like soft sleep training. Like, it doesn't have to be like, and that meant for me at 4 months, and this was really interesting, was with the eldest when we did 6 months, it was sort of told you like bridging that gap from 4 to 6 a.m. Like, no, you are now going to do 6 to 6 or 7 to 6 or whatever it was then. Here it was like she was still getting up twice at night. So what I found really interesting with doing it at 4 months was like, well, no, we're not going to ask a 4-month-old who, I guess medically or just, doesn't need to sleep a full night yet. But we're just she should be able to do like 4 to 5 hours or whatever and not wake up. Do you remember in another podcast where we were talking about sleep survival? My
Yeah.
issue was with the second, I wasn't getting long stretches like I was with the first. And between the third and fourth month, we got really hit with what I think, if it does exist or whatever, the fourth month sleep regression, or, still using my old sleeping tricks that weren't working anymore. And she'd be getting up every 45 to an hour.
Yeah.
Like, it's maddening.
Hmm.
Like, it was maddening. I was losing my mind.
Yeah.
Like, it was sheer insanity. And so, like, we needed to do that. And so for us, it just meant like, well, sleep training, sleep teaching, like giving them these skills doesn't mean that like right away we were going to make her do a marathon and sleep till 6 a.m. It was more like, you now should not be waking up every 45 minutes. So for that first waking, well, no, you shouldn't be getting up. And we're going to try to teach you to connect that cycle.
Yeah. Just because you teach them the skill to sleep, like they're human, just like us, like they can still have an off night. They can still wake up and need you for some.
They can still regress.
Just because you teach them how to sleep or you sleep train doesn't mean that it's going to be guaranteed sleep every night. It's going to be amazing, like the end, So
it's a constant investment, and there's always bumps in the road.
Yeah.
But I think what I've learned is you always go back to basics, right? You try to go back to,
Yeah, of course.
like, I find it interesting, like with my 2.5-year-old, like I've definitely seen regressions along the way. I think we're in one right now. She's doing these a lot of like curtain calls where it's like, and I've heard about it and now I'm there. It's like, we're putting her to bed. She doesn't want to go to bed. She'll actually voice now, I want to stay awake.
Yeah.
I don't want to sleep.
Yeah.
And then she'll be like, oh, and she takes us a bit for like, idiots. She's like, oh, I want a glass of water.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hungry.
Oh, I want this tutu or this,
Yeah.
lovey or stuff.
Yeah.
I
More
want
books.
this one and this one. And then she's
Yeah.
just like, stretching kind of her luck. And
Yeah.
that to me, it's like, as you're saying, it's a constant investment. It's a constant, like it adapts, it evolves.
Yeah.
And it's now we're trying to like work on like, how do we
Well,
like overcome this? And then sometimes she's just playing in her bed for like an hour and a half. And I'm like, it's not, she's not tired enough. There's something's off in her schedule. Like,
Yeah.
why is it taking her an hour and a half? All to say, it's this ever evolving
mhm.
thing until they're like teenagers.
Yeah. And every time, that's funny because every time we have some sort of like discrepancy or hurdle or something that's off, you know, I'm like calling my sleep specialist. I'm like, can we book an appointment, please? Because she's asking for more books and I don't really know what to do about that. So
You'll let me know what they say.
and she'll and she'll give me strategies and tools and, you know, try
Okay, I
this,
want them.
try that, try, you know, and they work, you know,
Okay, I
because she
really-
gives me many and they work because it's like one more book, one more this, one more that. And you know, because I'm not creative enough to think of, it's my first time, like I'm not creative enough to think of ways to get her in her bed.
Or to know what's going on. I think you
Or
first
to
need
know
to
what's
know
going
it's
on.
like you first need
Exactly.
to know what's going on
Yeah.
to then address
Exactly.
the problem. If
So-
you don't know,
Yeah.
because sometimes I'm like, oh, this will pass, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no, this is not passing. This
No.
is the new
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah.
It's the new
Exactly.
thing. So what's
Exactly.
going on here?
Yeah. Exactly.
But you'll let me know.
Yeah, I will let you know. Thank you very much, Catherine, for sharing
My
your
pleasure.
sleep stories with us. You've been listening to We've Probably Been There, a podcast by First Moms Club. Follow First Moms Club on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Watch us on YouTube and Spotify, and listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. Join us next week for more stories about this roller coaster we call motherhood. Thank you for listening.